says Q1, week 8, and today is Monday. Number 1, you had to use the distributive property. It was 3/4 times the quantity, a -10 plus 2/5. You could have added first what's inside the parentheses or do the distributive property. I did the distributive property because it was a little bit easier. 3/4 times a -10. So I do 3/4 times a negative, and what do we put a whole number over to make it an improper?
1.
Okay, plus, then we're gonna write 3/4 times 2/5. So now we have two different problems we're doing here. I am going to reduce by 2, that becomes a 2. This becomes a 5. So 3 times a -5 is a -15, and 2 times 1 is 2. So a -15 halves plus, now I do my reduce by 2, reduce by 2. 3 times 1 is 3. 2 times 5 is 10. Now, as I've stated before, anytime I'm adding fractions, I could have made them improper fractions first if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. I am going to write them up and down. A -15 halves plus 3/10. My common denominator is going to be 10. So I'll multiply this by 5. 15 times 5 is 75. So it's a -75/10, and this can just stay 3/10. My denominator is going to stay 10. I have a negative and a positive. So I'm going to subtract. What's 75 minus 3? 72, but it's negative. Now I'm going to change this improper fraction to a mixed number. 10 goes into 72 7 times with 2 left over. Keep the negative sign. But then I need to simplify or reduce my 2/10 to 1/5. So my answer is a -7 and 1/5. How many of you got it to at least to a -7 and 2/10 and just forgot to reduce?
I forgot.
Okay, or just maybe forgot the negative. Okay. If not, you have to do all that work. That's a lot of work for one problem, I know. But you need to have it all written down. Number 2 is what we're working on for this new chapter, chapter 4. And it's just taking a fraction and making it to a decimal.
You have a number 3.
Oh, sorry. Number 2. And then we just take 3 divided by 11. 11 does not go into 3. So add a decimal, bring it up, add a 0. 11 goes into 30 twice, because if it was 3, it'd be 33. So it's 22. 8 left. Add a 0. Bring the 0 down. 11 goes into 80 7 times, which is 77. 3 left. Add a 0. Yes. Some of us are already noticing that we are repeating. I'm just going to finish it out so you guys can really see it. Now, what's repeating? It's just the 2 and the 7. So when you rewrite your answer, it'd be 0.27. Don't forget to put the bar over it. Bar notation is what we really need to have.
I did Tuesdays.
Go ahead.
I put like the bar thing over the other 2 and the 7. So I wrote it 0.2727 with
Put the bar over the second instead of 2/7.
Yeah.
You should just have it over the 2/7.
Okay.
I did Tuesday's number 2, so.
And then you probably got it wrong. Number 3. 78 equals 18 minus 5y. Draw my line, and then I'm going to put a box. Now when I'm doing that, I'm including the -5 or the -5. Always include that sign now in front of it, because a subtraction is also like a negative. So now how do I get 18 over that?
Subtract.
Subtract 18. To get it over to the other side, because it goes across that magical line.
Why would you subtract?
Because this is like a positive. And the opposite of a positive 18 is a negative 18. And when you have a negative, it's also like subtracting. So 78 minus 18 is 60 equals a negative 5y. Box that y up, because now I have to get rid of the 5 in front of it. So I divide by a negative 5, divide by a negative 5. 60 divided by 5 is 12, but one's negative, one's positive, so it has to stay negative.
I got that. I just forgot my negative.
Yeah, same.
If you are making progress and getting it down to the 12, I mean, that's great. Because that's making a lot more progress than what you have, and you should all have everything written down.
I'm doing actually pretty good on those. Like, I'm doing a lot better than I usually do.
I've done them all
But
three.
try to start getting our signs correct. Yes, Carter.
Why would you box up the subtraction sign?
Why is what?
Why do you box up the subtraction?
Because it's not a subtraction.
Why do we do what? Say that one more time.
Box up the subtraction sign.
With that 5?
Yeah.
Because you want to consider that the subtraction is also like a negative.
Because if you don't, then what's the negative there? You know?
Okay? Because when I subtract an integer, it's like I'm adding a negative. So it's just keeping it like a negative. Does that make sense? Okay, good question. Number 4. All you had to do was circle the greatest common factors. So I circle the 2 that they have in common, the 2 x's that they have in common. So then you have to rewrite it. 2 times x squared. You have to say that it is x squared. I don't want to just say x times x. So don't just say 2 times x, change it to 2x squared. Number 4.
5.
Oh gosh, thank you. Whatever, the next one. Number 5 says write an expression to represent the perimeter of the rectangle. And here's our rectangle. And I need 2 of these sides and 2 of these sides. So I'm going to write it like 2 times the quantity, 2/3 x plus 10. That's the 2 sides plus 2 of the other sides, which are 1/3 x plus 5. When I do this, I cannot combine what's inside that parentheses because one's an x and one's just a number. So I'm going to do the distributive property. So 2, which is 2/1, times 2/3 x, which is 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 3 is 3, so I have 4/3 x. And then I do 2 times 10. And what's 2 times 10?
20.
So I'm going to say 4/3 x plus 20. Bring down that plus sign. Now I've got 2 times 1/3. So 2/1 times 1/3 x. 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 3 is 3. So it's 2/3 x. Then I do 2 times 5, so then it's plus, 2 times 5 is
10.
10. Now I'm gonna combine what I have alike. 4/3 x, 2/3 x. 4/3 and 2/3 is
2.
6/3 x, which is really 2x, because 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then I'm gonna combine my 20 plus 10, which is,
30.
so then it's just plus 30.
Can you pull that up a little bit?
Sure can. Six. 2x plus 6 minus 10x equals 30. Draw my line. I have a 2x and a minus 10 or a negative 10. What's a 2x and a negative 10?
Negative 8x.
Negative 8x. And then I bring down my 6. Equals 30. Box up that minus 8x or negative 8x. Now, I'm gonna explain this for just a second. Carter, when you said 2x, how come I make that a negative? How come I consider it a negative? Because it would just be like saying, these two would be like saying 2x minus 10x, which would be like keep, change the subtraction to addition, change that positive to a negative. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then now I've got a negative 10 and a positive 2, which would make a negative 8. Is that more clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how do I get rid of my 6? I'm going, this is a positive, so I'm going to subtract it. So they can cancel each other out. I'm left with a negative 8x equals, and then 30 minus 6 is 24. So I'm gonna box up that x. I'm gonna divide by a negative 8 on both sides.
That should be negative 3.
So I have an x equals a negative
3.
3. Good job getting that far. Good job getting that far.
I just did it.
I accidentally did 5 as 6.
Number 7 is what we're going to get into about percentages coming up. If a woman making $25 an hour gets a 10% raise, how much will she now make in an 8-hour workday? So I start with $25 and I need to get a 10% raise. So if I'm working $25 an hour, 10%, how do I change 10% to a decimal? Move the decimal over 2, right? So I'm gonna take 25 times 0.1. So 1 times 5 is 5, 1 times 2 is 2. There's 1 decimal, so I come in 1 decimal. So I got a $2, and 10% is $2.50. So I add that to my $25 I already made. Make sure you're adding decimals and lining everything up. So now she's making $27.50 an hour. I want to figure out how much that is for 8 hours. So I take $27.50 and do what? Multiply by 8. 8 times 0 is 0. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 7 is 56 plus 4 makes 60. 8 times 2 is
16.
16 plus 6 makes
34, 22. Wait,
Something.
16 plus what?
Six.
6.
Then yeah, 22.
22. 2 decimal places, so I start on the right and I go 1, 2. So in an 8-hour day, she'll make $220.
Is it $27.50 an hour a lot?
That's good. That's a good earning right now. $27.50. Yeah. So that is a job that would not be at McDonald's or Family Express or anything like that,
Aw.
unless you're management position, and they sometimes can make more.
So maybe like a top
If you're a
position.
manager, you probably make about
So
15.
we need half of this.
I think my mom makes like.
All right, number 8. The one thing they didn't tell you about that problem though, is that's how much you would think she would make in 8 hours, but then you have to take out taxes and stuff like that, and you have to pay. So that's not her bring home money,
Maybe a lot less.
It's her.
but that's how much they would make. All right, number 8, our last and final one for the day.
Yay.
The walls of a square room. So it's saying that every wall is the same size. Needs painting. Each of the 4 walls is 12 feet wide by 8.5 feet tall. 1 gallon of paint covers 75 feet squared. How many gallons will you need? First, you need to find the area of all of the walls. So area equals length times width. And we said the length was 12 times the width was 8.5. So 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 1 makes 6.
6.
Cross off what I've used. Add a 0. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 1 is
8.
plus 1 makes 9. Add them together. Then I count my
One decimal.
decimal. 1 decimal. Don't forget to go back and count your decimal.
102.
So each wall is 102 feet squared. But how many walls are in my room?
4.
So I take that times 4. So now my room is 408 square feet. And I have to divide that by how many square feet for each gallon?
12.
No, my gallon says it'll paint 75 square
Oh,
feet.
so then,
So I divide it by 75.
yeah.
It doesn't go into 4, it doesn't go into 40, but it goes into 408
I just-
5 times. 5 times 75 is 375. 33 left. Now, I could keep doing my division if I wanted to, but this says that I'm gonna have to have some left over, right?
Yeah.
Okay, am I going to paint my room only part way? Or am I gonna buy another gallon so I can finish my whole
Another
room?
gallon.
So it would not be 5 gallons of paint, it would be 6. Cause you're not gonna leave any of it unpainted. And realistically, when you go and paint rooms, it takes a bit more than what they suggest how far the paint can go.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
takes a lot more.